Welcome to the Just Word Podcast. I'm Pat Bolland. The Just Word Podcast is brought to you by Just Wealth, investing the way it should be, just for you. Once in a while, the Just Word delves into more than just investing. I love money management, personal finance, small business. Let's just focus on small business for a while, because all too often business owners look at their bank account, see no money, and scramble to get new business. It doesn't have to be so stressful. According to our next guest, Rocky Lalvani serves as the Chief Profitability Advisor and is a certified Profit First professional, and he'll join us right after this. Rocky, a real pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Pat. Excited to be here today.
You know, I do want to get to this whole concept of profit first, but I know you love talking about money management and personal finances, and you have a number one rule about savings. Could you share that with us, and we'll start the conversation there?
So, yeah, I am a super big fan of compounding. People say Albert Einstein called it the number one wonder of the world or something along those. I'm not sure if it's true or not. People make this stuff up, but let's just look at this from a simple standpoint. If you took $1 and you doubled it every day for a month, at the end of the month, you'd end up with about $10 billion, which
$10 billion.
10 billion. Yeah.
Okay.
But here's the problem. Right? Let's say you skipped one day. So I was going to do it today, but I'll do it tomorrow. Right? You lose $5 billion. And if you forget tomorrow and you do it the next day, you lose another $2.5 billion or $7.5 billion.
Right. Because at the very end, if you end up with 10 billion, then it was 5 billion the day before, because you're doubling it every time.
Exactly.
Got it.
And if you skip 10 days, you're only going to end up with about $500,000, which isn't bad. But you could have been a billionaire.
Yeah.
Because you didn't take action, because you didn't start. You didn't put the $1 in and keep going. And that literally is the problem that I think most people face. They don't take action. They don't start. They don't get going. Now, no one's going to double $1 every day. I get that. But whatever your compounding power is, you've got a lifetime to do it. And if you don't start, you're losing a lot. And that's what they don't realize.
Yeah, true. But I mean, when it's the first dollar, you got the first dollar in your pocket, even the second, third, and maybe up to the 10th, you've got that money available. When you get to the end and you have $5 billion and you got to double it the next day to $10 billion, you don't have that $5 billion. So there's a limit to what you can actually do, right?
Well, I mean, you can do this on more practical terms. Let's just say I'm a normal investor and I invest a set amount of money from 21 to 30, and then I stop. And person B starts at 30 and invests from 30 to 65. The first person's actually going to end up with more money than the second person, even though they only did it for 10 years versus 35 years, because they had those head start those 10 years or 9 years, whatever the actual math works out to. It's the concept. You can figure out the math behind it.
Right. Okay. So now that gets into your whole concept of profit first and the system incorporated into that. And Mike Michalowicz, actually, I think, was the one that put it together. Am I correct?
He is. It's his book, and I'm just one of his certified professionals that helps people implement.
Okay. So what is the profit first concept?
The profit first concept is give every dollar a job. So for most business owners, right, you get all this money come in and you got a big pile of money sitting there. And so you start spending it because we're told you got to spend money to make money, which is a lie. There are ways to do it without doing that, right? But when you start giving every dollar a job and you send it to do its purpose, you have much more clarity on your financials. So let's look at this from personal finance. Back in the day, maybe our great grandparents got money from their pay, and what would they do? They'd have jars or envelopes, and they'd have labels on them. One might say rent, one might say food, one might say utilities, and they would take their money and they put it in the envelopes. And when it came time to pay those bills, they paid them. And when you ran out of grocery money, well, I don't know, maybe you hunted, maybe you ate peanut butter out of the cupboard, you made it through the end of the month, right? You figured out how to do it. You got more resourceful as the money ran out towards the end of the month.
You raise an interesting point because my mother had that. She called it her mad money, but it'd be money that she found in the laundry, for instance, or, took out of the wash and somebody had left it in their pocket. And she would put it in a separate jar and then she would spend it. But I mean, all you're doing is structuring that way of collecting the money.
Correct. Same thing. If you're wondering, how do I start my compounding? Just set aside a certain percentage, have it automated, and go to a separate account, and it'll build wealth for you while you're sleeping. It just happens.
I get that. On the saving side, I understand where you're coming from, but how do you do that in a business? Because if I'm starting a business, there are costs associated. I'm not going to be able to put money away for a while, if ever.
Well, so that is because, right, you're looking at profit as an event, not as a habit. We look at profit as a habit that we build. So what we do is every dollar that comes into the business from $1, right? We said we were going to be profitable. We created a pro forma and we said, well, we're going to have a 5% profit margin. We said, I'm going to get paid. We said we have to pay taxes because we are profitable, right? And then we have what's left to spend. What most business owners do is they spend their paycheck in their business because, well, I got to put money in this business. They spend their profit on their business because one day I'll be profitable. One day I'll start worrying about it. They spend their tax money in their business. And then when the tax man comes, they're in big trouble, right? So what we do is we tell you from your first dollar, every time money comes in, put it in one bank account. And you can look at that bank account and you can see how much money came in. It's clear as day. If the money's all mixed, how do I know how much money came in? I don't. So by having one bank account where all the money comes in, it's clear to see how much came in. And then I allocate it to my other bank accounts. I put money aside for profit. Now, in the beginning, it might be 1%. You're not going to miss $1 out of 100. We put money aside so I get paid. I'm the one who invested in this business. I'm the one who works 90 million hours a week. Should I not get a paycheck? Most business owners pay themselves last instead of first. Then we have to set aside our money for the government. And now what's left is what's truly left to run our business on, our operating. Now, if we're a new business, we might have to make a capital infusion. The first thing I tell people is if you're going to run your business like that, let's say for the first year, take all of your money that you're going to infuse into the business, put it in a separate bank account. And every time your business doesn't have enough to run, go into that bank account, feel the pain of removing money and putting it into your business. And because that's going to give you the marker of how much is left. You will immediately know, hey, I spend about $1,000 a month in this business. There's $10,000 in the account. I just took 1,000. I got 9 months of runway left. I got to get to moving, right? It's all visceral feeling. It's putting feelings to your money. This is not an accounting system. It's a cash flow system designed based on the way entrepreneurs behave. What they do is they look at their bank account and go, can I spend or can I not spend? Or do I need to go out and hunt? And that's what this does.
Yeah. Okay. So a small business owner would say, I'm reinvesting in my idea, in my company. That's how they justify taking that money and putting it in. Are they wrong to say that?
Well, so you guys are in the investment business, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. Would you make an investment without asking what kind of return am I going to get on this?
No, not a chance. I'd like to have some idea.
Well, so why isn't the small business owner then saying, hey, I'm investing this in my business. When do I expect a return? This month? Next year? In 6 years? Have you actually done the numbers to say, if I put $1,000 in the business, when am I going to get my $1,000 back? And by how much is it going to grow? Because if you put $1,000 in, you work 40 hours this week and you get $1,000 back. Well, that was wasted 40 hours of time and risk and effort.
Yeah, excellent point. When you change the focus to profitability and then, as you say, cash flow management, what does that do to your life experience?
When you say life experience, you mean how do you live life? Like, do you mean
How do you-
you get to sleep at night? You mean you're not
Yes,
full of
that's exactly what I mean.
anxiety and worry? You're not freaking out all the time because how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to pay the tax man? I cannot tell you how many business owners that I've talked to that have 7 figures in revenue and nothing for them to show for their work because they paid themselves last, because they were constantly reinvesting in the business without asking the important question of when is I going to get a return? Is it going to work? And what does that look like for me?
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. So I get into this whole managing cash flow thing. I understand that. Why doesn't, like, a lot of small businesses have accountants? Why don't accountants teach you this?
Because that's not their job. First of all, accountants aren't necessarily business owners, so they don't understand how business owners think. Accountants think in credits and debits and making sure that everything is done compliant. Technically, an accountant, a CPA, is a tax person. Their job is to make sure that the tax form is filled out correctly. Their
Mm,
job is not to make sure you're profitable. And more often than not, they know that if they call you up and say, "Hey, Pat, you owe an extra 10 grand in taxes because you were profitable," you're going to scream at them because you don't have the 10 grand because you spent it because you didn't use profit first. So they're like, "Oh, Pat's going to call me and he's going to scream at me if he owes 10 grand in taxes. Hey, Pat, I think you need a new truck. It'll save on taxes. Go ahead and buy it." And then 4 months later, you can't make the payments on the truck. Your cash flow sucks. The accountant's got nothing to do with that. Hey, you bought the truck. What do you want from me? I saved you on taxes like you paid me to.
hmm. Okay. And that truck sounds awful appealing. So I see
I
where you're
know
going there.
that.
Yeah, that's the attraction. Yeah. Oh, I worked hard. I get a truck out of it. But
Yeah.
really, what you're suggesting is that rather than buying the truck, put it away in savings. What do you think is an appropriate profitability level to put aside for yourself? I mean,
Well,
you indicated for entrepreneurs and people starting business, 1% is a good number to start at. But what's the real target?
so I think if your business is not at least 10% profitable, you're going to start to hit a struggle point. Because a couple things we want to do. Number one, you need to pay yourself market wages. If you're
Mhm.
not paying market wages, and then you say you're profitable, you're not really profitable, right?
Right.
Because you're not paying yourself. So pay yourself market wage, at least 10% profit, because that gives you cushion. What we like to do is get business owners up to the point where their business has 2 months of expenses in cash inside the business, ready because COVID happens, because life happens, because you hit a recession, because your best customer leaves. Like, this is all going to happen. It at least gives you 60 days to survive, not 60 minutes, right? Cash flow is king. Without cash, you will struggle. So we want you to have a little bit. And then from 10%, if you can increase your profit 1 or 2% a year, it will compound, right? 10 years into business, now you're at a 20 or 30% profit margin, maybe.
Right. Yeah. So in fact, when you get started, you're recommending 2 month cushion just there. So if it costs you, I don't know, $500,000 to get started, you've got to have a couple of months on that business to make sure that you can make it through to the first year. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct. I usually tell most business owners the first year is very difficult. You generally are going to struggle. Year two, break even. Year three is when things really start to get going. The reality is, most businesses, half of them don't make it to 5 years. I think the number is 95% don't make it to 10 years. Those are American numbers. I don't know the Canadian numbers. Most businesses don't survive, and cash flow is one of the biggest problems. You can even have a growing business that's skyrocketing, but because you're growing so fast, your cash flow may not keep up, and you may not have enough cash to afford to grow. And so people just think growing is the answer. Not necessarily, not if you need cash to grow.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum, just not an entrepreneur getting started, but some family business that's been, second, third generation. And a lot of those companies fail. Is it because they aren't using the profit first concept?
Well, so the first question is, the person who started the business had a love and a passion for it, maybe a skill and a desire. Does that third generation person have that? Does that third generation leader have the business skills that they need to run the business, or were they just handed a business? And
Right.
so that is, I think, the number one question. And do they even want to be in that business? Is it what they truly enjoy and do? So I think those are part of the problems. The second thing is, how is business information passed from generation to generation? How do you actually test if your grandkids are capable of running the business and are willing to do it? So I think a lot of information has to be passed down, and they have to make sure it's a good fit.
Okay. So the profit first concepts don't necessarily apply because they've already got profits.
No, they could have been struggling for those 3 generations.
True.
I mean, profit first applies everywhere. It doesn't matter how long you have or haven't been in business. So if you are a third generation business and you are struggling and you don't have a ton of cash, you're barely scraping by, then profit first will help you to get better. It helps.
Okay.
We've worked with businesses that have been in business 10, 20, 30 years, and they've always struggled. And generally within 18 months of working with us, if they follow the rules and they do what they're supposed to, they're like, we've never had so much cash. We don't know what to do with it. We'll call Pat up, give it to him. He'll invest it for you, and life is good.
Okay. So, Rocky, when you walk into a business, whether it's a brand new one or one that's been around for 20, 30 years, as you indicate, what's the first thing you do and what you look at? Where do people start if they want to take on this concept?
Well, so those are 2 different questions. The reason I say that is the first time that we sit down with a new business owner that becomes a client, we spend 2 hours getting to know them, their history, their beliefs, how they behave around money, and what they truly want out of their business. Because until we know who they are and what they want, we can't set a target to help them get there. So that's what we do for business owners. From a profit first standpoint, the biggest struggle point that we see with most business owners is they won't go open up the 5 bank accounts. Like, it's hard for them to open up bank accounts, but yet, like, you can do this yourself. You've listened to this podcast. All you need to do literally to get started is maybe just open 1 bank account, call it your profit account, and put 1% in it. Try it for a couple months. See what happens. See how much money you get. And then say, oh, this does work. Maybe I should do more.
Yeah. Truth be told, somebody told me not to profit first, put your taxes away first. And
Yes.
so I do have a totally separate tax account. I've always have had that. I never thought of doing the profit, to be dead honest.
Yeah. The same way. I mean, these are universal principles. They apply to your personal life. They apply to your business. They apply to everything. You just have to apply them in the way that works best for you.
So, Rocky, if people want, we're just getting a little short on time now. If people want more information, where can they go to find out how to the concepts that are based with profitability and expand from there?
So before they come and they check that out, could they do me a favor?
Sure.
Can they hit like on this show? Pat does a great job. Can you give him a little love? Hit like, share it with a friend. Be
Sponsored.
nice.
Yeah. Sponsored.
Sponsored.
Subscribe. That's the
subscribe. Whatever you need to do. Yes.
I love you, Rocky.
Be nice.
Okay, that's a good start.
If you'd like to learn, wherever you're listening to this, you can probably find the Profit Answer Man podcast. And that's where we teach everything we do. We give all the information away, go into much more depth than I have today, and we'll bring you success stories. We'll bring you tips on how to constantly improve and grow profit in your business.
Rocky, a real pleasure. You've opened my eyes on several fronts. Thank you.
You are most welcome. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Okay, Rocky Lalvani. He's a Chief Profitability Advisor and a certified Profit First professional.